Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emily and I'm the founder of She Reads the Stars, which is an astrology business that's very much devoted to reclaiming the ancient art of astrology through the lens of the true sky that is visibly above us. So I work with the actual visible constellations above us, not the tropical zodiac, which most of the world is familiar with, but the real-time placements that have really guided mystics, sages, and of course sky watchers for literally thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's just something that us in modern times have forgotten and fallen out of touch with. So as you'll get to know quite quickly on my channel, I'm not here for just mundane spiritual entertainment, but I'm also here for returning anyone listening to the roots and rhythms of nature and to the ancient cosmic design that is very much still alive and present. And my place is just helping us retune into that language. Now, in this video today, we'll be diving into the astrology for June 2025 using the True Sidereal transits. Now, overall, this month is bringing some deeply impactful energies that definitely feel like deep rippling undercurrents kind of moving through the collective field at the moment. And there's a reason that these kind of transits just aren't the ones that we are going to gloss over. They're really the ones that want to make us actually acknowledge what's going on in our life at the moment and think deeper about things. So at the end of this video, you'll probably be reflecting deeply on a lot of what you're building and working on in your life at the moment, whether that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. This is just going to be stirring a lot of reflection. So before we also get into each planetary transit and how they're playing out this month, I do want to zoom out and look at the kind of overarching energetic themes, specifically through the lens of element, modality, and polarity. Because when we actually understand what kind of cosmic landscape we're dealing with, that's when we can better move through it with more intention, more awareness, and of course, more sovereignty. So let's first talk about the elements. Now, elementally, June is bringing a very potent mixture, but it's definitely leaning more so to the side of air and fire, which means that there's going to be a lot of movement, ideas, and stimulation in the mental field. Especially with Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini, we're definitely dealing with a strong air influence. Now, air is the element of the mind, so it governs communication, perception, movement, breath, and intellectual connection. And with both Mercury and Jupiter there in Gemini, this isn't just kind of everyday chatter, this is more so the potential for expanded perspectives, paradigm shifting kind of conversations, and definitely insights that really challenge what we thought we once knew. But of course, air definitely needs its grounding. Without it, we definitely end up very unanchored, distracted, and scattered. So this kind of mental activation is definitely beautiful, but only if we're also creating enough space to really digest and integrate what we're learning. Now, when it comes to the fire dominant element this month, we've got some really strong players. We've got Venus in Aries, Mars in Leo, and these two especially bring a very expressive, bold, and courageous energy into the month. So fire is all about desire, action, creativity, inspiration, and willpower. And so it's like our ability to say yes to life, to pursue what lights us up, to take risks, to express what's in our heart without shame. But just like fire in nature, it does need to be tended, because without emotional depth or grounded direction, fire can burn very hot and very fast and then leave us depleted. So this is especially important to remember this month when, the desire to act or initiate may be very, very strong. But the deeper question is whether those actions are truly aligned with our long-term vision. So then we have the stabilizing presence of Earth, especially through the sun's journey in Taurus currently. And this is definitely such a needed influence amidst all the mental and fiery activation, because Taurus reminds us to slow down, to root and to come back into the body, especially into our senses, and very much so into what's real and enduring. So Taurus definitely isn't flashy, it's very foundational. Taurus is the kind of energy that will ask if you're really building something right now that's going to last, because this energy supports long-term commitment, consistent effort, and grounded embodiment, which are definitely all qualities that we need more than ever when the world is feeling like it's moving too fast, or when your life feels like it's moving too fast. And then lastly, we've got a bit of water, which is through Saturn and Pisces, which has been more of a long-term influence. Saturn's been in Pisces for a while, but it continues to deepen as the months unfold. And water is very much like the emotional, spiritual, and intuitive. And Pisces in particular does dissolve boundaries. It kind of blurs the lines between what's yours and what's collective, between, logic and feeling, between time and timelessness. It's just anything that's dividing, it's kind of blurred away. And Saturn here is a very interesting contradiction, because Saturn itself wants structure, wants order, boundaries, and clarity. But then Pisces wants surrender, flow, and transcendence. So the work here basically is to learn how to create structure for the invisible, to give form to the formless. And that might look like building spiritual discipline, setting emotional boundaries, or really turning your creative dreams into something real and something tangible. Now, with transits, you can look at this coming up in any facet of life, whether it's your career, your relationships, your social life, your relationship with your body. You can see these energies that I'm speaking of extremely generally amongst the board show up in each part of your life. And that's how you want to kind of identify it to be able to navigate your life personally. Okay, now let's move into modality, which is the way that energy moves. So this month includes all three modalities: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And that means we're being asked to engage with life on all levels. Cardinal signs help us to initiate, start the new thing, take the leap, speak the truth. And Aries and Cancer definitely bring some of that energy this month. Then we've got the fixed signs like Taurus and Leo. That's going to be really supporting us in holding steady, staying committed, and really seeing things through, even when, the initial excitement sort of fades. It's all about long-term perspection. And then we have the mutable signs like Gemini and Pisces, which are going to be inviting us to shift, to adapt, to reflect, and also to allow change to happen. So you might feel pulled in a few different directions. Part of you kind of wants to start something new. Part of you wants to double down on what you've already kind of begun. And then another part of you is kind of feeling the urge to really soften, to pivot, and to surrender completely. So all of these impulses are valid. The key is to move through with awareness, kind of knowing and discerning when to initiate, when to maintain and slow down and stay a bit steady, don't move too quickly, and when to shift your perspective, to change your belief system, and to be able to surrender in the flow of the moment. So finally, looking at polarity in June, we're seeing a slightly stronger presence of masculine polarity, which isn't about gender, it's about energetic orientation. So masculine energy is direct, assertive, and expressive. It's very outwardly focused because it's yang energy. So masculine energy wants to act, to solve, to create movement. And this especially comes through strongly in the Aries and Leo placements especially. But that doesn't mean that the feminine polarity isn't present this month. In fact, Saturn in Pisces definitely brings a deep feminine undercurrent that's going to remind us to listen, to feel, to be able to receive, and to allow what's meant to be to be. So again, we're looking for integration, not swinging too far into output and action, but definitely remembering the power of pause, of presence, and of everything that's unseen, and essentially God's work in the background, and essentially trusting God's divine timing. So now that we've grounded into the elemental, modal, and polarity overview of June 2025, let's now move into the specific planetary transits and how each one might be showing up in your relationships, your body, your inner work, and even your creative path. Okay, so let's begin with Taurus, because the sun is in Taurus and it will remain there until around the solstice in June, which is on June 20th. So when the sun moves through Taurus in the actual sky, that is when we are invited to really slow down and to reconnect with what's tangible, what's nourishing, and what sustains us on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. So essentially, the sun in Taurus is bringing our attention to what's real, tangible, and brings security in our life. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign, of course, which means that it's not about chasing the next big thing. It's more so about tending to what's already in your life, but what is the most grounded. So this season essentially asks us to stop rushing toward imagined futures and to instead get rooted in what's here now. So that could be the food you eat, the money you earn, the quality of your sleep, the way you care and show up for your own physical body. All of these things are ruled by Taurus. So it's the part of the zodiac that wants beauty and stability, but not just in a superficial way. Taurus wants the kind of beauty that is felt, that's lived in, that's real. So this solar transit is an invitation to return to your senses, to your values, and to actually question, what are you currently building that's actually going to last? So Taurus tends to hold on to things. It doesn't have that energy of letting go and releasing generally, but this time period, especially with a lot of fire and masculine dominant energy going on, and a very small amount of water, when we're experiencing the sun in Taurus, anything in our life that is a little bit ungrounded, floating in the air, a bit, unknown, which usually you feel like you'd be able to just trust in timing during a more like Pisces dominant season of our life. And at the moment, it seems like you're wanting to get everything grounded. You're wanting to see everything in your physical reality, make everything secure and tangible, whether that's in relationships, career, anything that's like involving a little bit of anticipation. It's not that Taurus is impatient. The fire energy coming through, especially with Venus and Mars, which are both the masculine and feminine polarities of the planets that are in fire energy signs. So in romance life, there can be a bit of impatience and impulsivity coming on, wanting to really heat things up. But then the sun in Taurus is making everyone want to think like long term, to be able to actually ground into reality, something real and tangible at the moment. But that doesn't mean that it's going to have a positive outcome. That just means of what our focus is situated on. So this is only lasting for a few days longer, because around the solstice on June 20th, the sun is going to enter Gemini. And so that's when the energy will start to pick up again, particularly in essence of conversation and communication. So Gemini is a mutable air sign, and when the sun enters this sign in the real sky, we move out of that slow and sensual and physical world, Taurus energy, and into something a bit more curious, adaptable, way more light, a little less attached. You know, Taurus is quite attached, whereas Gemini is a little bit more detached, a little bit more fluid. I think fluid might be the word, but essentially just more socially attuned. So the focus definitely will turn towards communication, ideas, networking, definitely exploring different perspectives, just letting our mind drift a bit more, being able to, branch out, to connect, to share, multitask. So it's definitely got that mutable energy of being a little bit more spread out. So making sure that you also don't spread yourself too thin, because Gemini can be mentally exhilarating, but also very mentally exhausting if we don't create that space to actually process what we're taking in. So this part of the month definitely supports conversations, writing, planning, and visioning, especially if you've taken the time earlier in the month to really get grounded in your long-term values. So you'll definitely notice the solar shift from Taurus to Gemini, because it will really just feel like moving from, say, the garden into the marketplace. You know, both spaces will have their own kind of wisdom and serve different parts of our journey. Just honor that transition and see the flow of how you actually change with the sun as it changes through those constellations. So now moving into the realm of communication and intellect, we have Mercury in Gemini at the moment, and Mercury is currently direct. So this is where Mercury is most at home. Gemini is a mutable air sign, and Mercury rules over all things mental. Our thoughts, our speech, the way we process and share information. So this placement definitely creates a strong emphasis on movement in the mental plane. It can definitely be a time of increased learning, spontaneous conversations, creative breakthroughs, social engagement. Also, changes in opinion, being able to be more mentally flexible, to see from different lenses, different point of views. You might also find yourself kind of bouncing between ideas or drawn to really dive deeper into new topics, podcasts, books, or like very collaborative conversations. However, because this energy moves very quickly, it can also bring a tendency towards distraction, anxiety, or even mental burnout if we're not being extra mindful. So yes, it's a great time to be curious, to, follow the breadcrumbs of what lights up your mind, but also don't forget to integrate what you're learning. It's very easy for everything to just stay in the mental headspace rather than actually taking physical action on what you've got in your mind. Now, just because in Gemini season we have a tendency to consume more, learn more, it doesn't mean that we're leaving the space for reflection and synthesis. So just be intentional about actually doing that. Now, Jupiter has recently moved out of Taurus and into Gemini, which really amplifies everything I just said, because Jupiter is the planet of growth, expansion, wisdom, and belief systems. And when it moves through Gemini, it brings an invitation to expand your worldview through dialogue, through curiosity, and definitely new ways of thinking. So we can definitely notice a change in our belief systems, but unlike Mercury, Jupiter takes a more philosophical approach. So it's less about the day-to-day facts, but more about the meaning behind them. So because of this, you might find yourself questioning old belief systems, maybe becoming more open to new perspectives, or also feeling more called to teach and share your knowledge as well. So ultimately, this particular transit really supports writing, speaking, networking and learning, especially in fields related to truth, communication, and media. Actually getting out there and putting your voice out there with Jupiter in the mix is a great benefit in being able to reach more people, be heard by more people, and there's a little bit of blow up energy as well in the mix when it comes to you speaking your truth, you communicating, teaching, and sharing knowledge and information. But with Gemini, the trick here is that you actually have to stick to it, because Gemini is a bit of a double-edged sword where you're going to get a little bit of shiny object syndrome. You know, do one thing, then do the next thing, move on to the next thing, learn this, then learn that, then learn that. You know, change directions pretty quickly. So the rewards of Jupiter expanding what you're putting mental energy towards would be so much greater if you're actually committing to something. So that's something to very much keep in mind if you do feel like you want to pursue a certain project or bring it out to the world. Make sure that you're actually committing to it, putting majority of your mental energy towards it, and learning maybe that one subject. Because if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to notice any of that Jupiter, you know, reap your rewards or expansive public attention sort of energy that I was just mentioning. So also try to find clarity amidst the noise. With Gemini season, there will be a lot of mental chatter, a lot of noise. It's going to be very distracting energy. Often when people do astrology transit readings, they don't talk about the other side to situations, the side that is, you know, we need to be aware of this so that we can navigate this transit more carefully. And with all of this Gemini energy, again, it's feeling confused, especially by what do I believe, you know, questioning your thoughts, your ideas, which again, basically try and stay focused, try and commit to one idea, one thought, one topic, and then actually see it through. That's kind of the way to work through this. Now let's talk about Venus in Aries, which is bringing an entirely different flavor to this transit discussion. This is more bold, fiery, and independent energy. So Venus governs love, relationships, beauty, our sense of worth, our values. And when she moves through Aries, which is a cardinal fire sign, she's definitely not her most soft and passive. She's very initiating, very brave, and very much self-directed. So what this means is this season can be a very powerful time for rekindling your connection to desire, your desire to live fully, to express yourself, to create, to initiate, especially in relationships. Things where you might have held back, kept quiet, or second guess yourself. You're kind of thinking, not anymore, I'm just going to say what I want to say. It's more forward energy. Now, all of this can also bring a sense of wanting more autonomy or a readiness to take the lead in expressing your needs and desires, likely in relationships as well. So now is a really great time to be asking, what do I really want? And then act on that answer without waiting for permission. Because the shadow side of Venus in Aries is being overly impulsive or kind of self-centered in the pursuit of pleasure or connection. So basically make sure that you keep checking in with whether your actions are aligned with integrity and respect or merely with impulsivity. So now let's talk about Mars and Leo, because this is adding to the dynamic, more expressive energy. You know, Mars represents our drive, our willpower, how we go after what we want. And in Leo, it becomes more about heart-centered action. So Leo is a fixed fire sign ruled by the sun. And when Mars moves through this part of the sky, it wants us to create, to lead, and to shine. So this transit asks you where you're not being bold enough in your self-expression. You know, are you standing behind your work? Are you standing behind your words? And you're like, you know, if you say something, you said it and you're confidently saying it. This is the energy of really standing strong and standing behind your work, you know, what you say, who you are. This is showing up confidently. Or are you still dimming yourself to be safe and accepted by others? This is the question. Are we dimming ourselves to be accepted, or are we standing strong in who we already are? Now, Mars in Leo really pushes us to own our confidence and to channel our life force into something that brings joy, not just productivity. It's very much a great time for creative projects, for public speaking, art, basically anything where you're sharing your essence with others. Now, the potential trap here is performance. There's going to be more of a tendency to do things for approval rather than doing it from authenticity. So just make sure that you keep checking in with yourself, that you're, you know, living from your heart rather than from your ego alone. Now, finally, we'll discuss Saturn as it's continuing through Pisces still, which is a much longer transit, but each month we are supposed to revisit it because it's going to get more deeper, more subtle, bringing in aspects of structure and responsibility, and a deeper connection with the spirit realms as Saturn continues to transit through Pisces. Now, this placement is like the architecture of the unseen. It really gives structure to the parts of life that are very much intangible, like our intuition, our dreams, and our inner world. And it can sometimes feel like being pulled between form and formlessness, almost like one part of you wants to build and define, while the other part of you actually just wants to dissolve, to flow, and to surrender to whatever's meant to be. So the work here is to really build internal resilience so that you can create routines, practices, and spiritual commitments that do really support your emotional clarity. And this can also be a deeply healing time as well, but only if you're actually willing to face the parts of your inner world that you've been avoiding. Because Saturn is the last planet to allow for any shortcuts, but you can be guaranteed that there will always be rewarding for devotion. So those are the major transits for June in the True Sidereal sky. And as you can see, this isn't exactly a light and fluffy month. There's kind of a lot to navigate this month. Lots of action, movement, initiation, but also a deep need to stay grounded and to really slow down and check in with ourselves about what it is that we really want, especially for our long-term stability. We're navigating air and fire energy on one side, but then we still have earth and water on the other, very much present. And that is tension, you know, that's contrast, but that's always where the real alchemy happens. So thank you for being here. And if you would like to book a one-on-one True Sidereal astrology reading with me, you can do so via my website in the description. And for the women listening who feel ready to go even deeper into the work of astrology, embodiment, living cyclically as well, I invite you to check out my mentorship program called Embodied Empress, which is an 8-week transformational one-on-one journey with myself. So thank you again for listening, and see you in the next video.